my friends. It's now time for the Soulful Psalms segment of Beacon of Truth. The Soulful Psalms, we take one of the Psalms that we hear in every holy sacrifice of the Mass, and we connect that Psalm to the daily Mass readings. And today, of course, is Monday of the first week of Lent. And awesome readings today. So our Psalm that we're going to be looking at is Psalm 19. Of course, Psalm 19 is in book 1 of the Psalms, all those Psalms attributed to David. But let's take a quick look at the readings that surround our Psalm for today, Psalm 19. So we have Leviticus chapter 19. Okay, so Leviticus, this part of Leviticus here, the Lord is giving Moses the law, right? Because Leviticus is one of the books in the Pentateuch, or the Torah, or the books of the law, which is Genesis, the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So here he's the Lord is giving the law to Moses. Now we have the 10 Commandments in the book of Exodus, chapter 20. Right, and a restating of those 10 commandments also in the book of Deuteronomy. But here in Leviticus, they're giving what's called the mitzvah. So remember I mentioned before when we talked about the 10 commandments that actually in Hebrew, it's not 10 commandments. It's Aseret Havarim, or in the rabbinic literature, Aseret Hadibrot, which means literally the 10 words of God. The word commandment is mitzvah. So, for example, you have a bar mitzvah, you become a son of the commandments, or a ba mitzvah, you become a daughter of the commandments. And usually that's like, when you turn, become a teenager. And so these laws, these 613 other laws are what's being articulated today. Now, some of these may have overlap with the 10 Commandments, but really how we're supposed to look at them is kind of an extension of the law, or how we take those 10 Commandments, which is really an articulation of the natural moral law, right? Do good and avoid evil, which is God implants in the hearts of every human being, right? Made in his image and likeness. How do we then live out those laws in very practical ways? So we see some of that here in Leviticus 19, which is also, by the way, part of the holiness code. Right, so Leviticus chapter 18 to 27 are what's called the holiness code, and so what we read today is part of that as well. So I'm not going to go. The reading's quite long, so I'm not going to go through the whole reading, but it again articulates some of this. Be holy, for I am holy. Right, so he calls his people. He almost challenges the people of Israel. I, the Lord, am holy, and I want you to be like me. Right, I want you to exude and to reflect my holiness, right? Which is a wonderful parallel to the book of Genesis when he says we're made in his image. So Salem in Hebrew there means a shadow. That's the outline or representation of the original. So we're called in a sense to reflect God's life. So when he says be holy, for I am holy, he's not saying be God. He's not saying that. But you're supposed to be effusive of my holiness. You're supposed to reflect and shine forth my holiness to the world by the way you. And so how do you do that? And so he gives us, again, some of the articulation of the natural moral law, but then expands on it. You shall not steal, right? You shall not lie, speak falsely. That's, again, reflection of the 10 words of God. You shall not swear falsely by my name. Right? Oh, I swear to God. So, the secular culture will just mock Jesus, just say his name in vain, just say his name, just being flippant. We'll say, I swear to God. Just using those kinds of things, just to say it, with no meaning or purpose behind it, and thus profaning the name of God. So God says himself, you shall not swear falsely by my name, thus profaning the name of your God. I am the Lord. So we have to respect and honor God's holy name. And he goes on, you shall not defraud your neighbor, withhold wages from a day laborer. You shall not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block in front of the blind. All those kinds of things here. Again, how do we live out that articulation of the natural moral law? And then the gospel is from Matthew 25. And this is one of those readings that we really need to pay attention to. Jesus talks about, everybody who just says, well, I'm a follower of Jesus, is not necessarily going to get to heaven. He goes, there's going to be a separation of the sheep from the goats. The sheep are going to be on his right. The goats are going to be on his left. And the sheep are the ones, I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. Naked, and you clothed me. So basically, how do you take the teachings of the Beatitudes, which he gave in Matthew chapter 5, as Matthew 5 through 7, which is a Sermon on the Mount, but Beatitudes specifically in Matthew 5, how do we live these out every day? And if you don't do that, there are repercussions. Again, God's not saying, God is saying, if you cooperate with my grace, if you put your faith into action, then, not just doing it for selfish reasons, not just doing it out of fear, like, oh, I have to do this or else God's going to punish me. And so I have to. No, you do it out of love. You respond to God's grace with love. You look at the person who's hungry, not just hungry for food, but hungering for truth. The person who's thirsty, not just thirsty for drink, but thirsting for God's love. The stranger, the person who's naked, who needs clothes, not just because they're destitute, but they're longing for companionship. They're longing for community. The person who's not just in prison, incarcerated, but the person who's in prison by sin. Right? So it's all these beautiful parallels here. So our faith is a both and. We have the corporal and the spiritual works of mercy that we're called by God to live out. And that's the importance of living our faith with passion and conviction. And that's the power of the sacraments.
For more on the Psalms with Deacon Harold Burke Sivers, check out Beacon of Truth weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio and streaming everywhere you listen to podcasts.